Sometimes that can come from like really passionate founders that think whatever it is they do is the best, which I get it. It's hard. That's their baby. But you got to have more of a like strategic, consultative type of approach to be different and stand out.
Are you looking to improve your sales skills without compromising your values? Welcome to Sales Made Easy, a podcast for business and personal growth. Join Harry Spaight, author of Selling with Dignity, your formula for life-changing sales results, as he hosts sales experts and business owners who share their journeys of personal growth and business success without resorting to pushy sales tactics. Now, here's your host, Harry.
What is the good word, ladies and gentlemen? Today with me, we have a great young man by the name of Collin Mitchell. Collin is a dad of 4 and a go-to-market leader with 3 exits under his belt, and he's the host of the top podcast, Sales Transformation. Collin is currently serving as the VP of Sales at Ledium, where they're helping sales organizations solve their top-of-funnel challenges, which for those who don't know is finding people to get in the funnel before you try to sell to them. So Collin, what is the good word today?
Oh man, I'm super excited to have this conversation. It's always good to catch up with you, but always even more fun to do it on a podcast and talk about things that we're both passionate about.
Yeah, I love it. Collin, I was looking at your history, and way back in 2010, I didn't think you were old enough to be doing something in 2010. For those who are just listening to the audio, Collin looks like he's about 25. So in 2010, you were selling digital technology. What did that consist of?
Yeah. So in 2010, that was when I got my first sales job. So we sold office equipment and aftermarket supplies, mostly aftermarket supplies. And we had sales floor, and it was my first job, job in sales. And so I didn't really know what to do other than just work my butt off. So I was the first one in the office every day, last one to leave, came in on Saturday, send out quotes, get my leads ready. The training was like, hey, here's who you should call, and here's the script, and there's the phone, and the CRM is horrible, so don't use it.
Nice. That is so funny because, I mean, you're like, it's just you in the sales bullpen. Were you the sales bullpen essentially?
No, so we had about 25 sellers, and I worked my way up to the top pretty quickly. And my managers said, hey, you're going to have your own team. Like, you should manage a team. And I'm like, yeah, that seems like, yeah, I'm crushing it. That seems like the next logical step here. And then of course I'm very impatient. So I'm like, hey, when am I going to where's my team? When am I going to get a team? And I was not ready to manage a team, to be honest, but for whatever reason, they couldn't, maybe they knew that and just didn't want to tell me that. So ultimately I left and then took a VP of sales position where I managed a team, and frankly made a lot of mistakes, but also learned a lot of business acumen and how to manage people and how to recruit, how to train, and how to ramp reps, and how to bring in new product lines and develop partnerships and relationships with vendors and all these other things besides just like, hey, I have a number, I have a product, I need to sell it. And so ultimately it was a good experience, drove quite a lot of revenue there. And then shortly after that, my wife and I started our own business together, doing very similar, except for we got more into services as well. And we grew that business from 0 to 5 million in 26 months.
Wow. Yeah. You really have the entrepreneurial spirit. So the sales helped kick that off, the sales job, but then you just went and decided to do your own thing after you had all of this experience. What was that? Was there any big surprise there along the way? I mean, it sounds like you're pretty much an overnight success, but were you really an overnight success, would you say?
No,
or was there some trials going through that period?
So I was pretty fortunate. Like we didn't do anything fancy. I mean, we didn't have the CRM that didn't work. Like we had proper technology set up. I invested a lot in the tools that my sales team would use. And we just got really good at recruiting. My wife had a recruitment background. So we had a good knack for just recruiting really good sales talent, some from our industry, some from not from our industry. And then just having a really good process that was simple and easy to follow. And we worked in just about 3 different niches that we did really well in. We didn't spend any money on advertising. We didn't do any fancy marketing, just really sales-driven organization, keeping it fairly simple. Now, was there challenges? Was it easy all the time? Yeah, definitely. Like I made a lot of mistakes because once we started to have some success, then I kind of, maybe my ego got a little bit too big. And I was like, hey, let's try all these things. And then we kind of became this company that was like, we do a lot of things, but like, do we do any of them well? And essentially, we had to kind of go back to our roots and get back to the things that we did well. And then from there, I've started multiple other companies.
And so today you're in this role as a VP of sales at Leadium. And this is a real challenge, is helping businesses to find people to speak with. I mean, everyone has salespeople are saying the same thing. It's like, we're not in enough opportunities.
Yeah.
And this is, so tell me a little bit about what your role is and what the company is doing, and maybe some things that we can glean, the rest of us who are out there making calls periodically.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you ask most sales leaders what their biggest problem is, most of them will tell you it's one of 2 things. We're not getting enough at-bats, or, hey, the at-bats we're getting aren't the right ones, which ultimately means we're having a lot of first meetings, but not a lot of second meetings. So if you talk to a lot of sales leaders, they typically have one, sometimes both. I mean, if they have both those problems, maybe they shouldn't be a sales leader, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is outbound has become difficult. And it's mainly because with the rise of a lot of technology and automation, and even now AI, there's a lot of people trying to get the attention of your prospects. And couple that with the fact that I don't care what you sell, but you have more competition than you've ever had in today's selling environment. And let me explain that. What I mean is we're all fighting for the same budget. Everybody's got to sell to the CFO. I talked to a sales leader a few months ago who sells a sales technology, selling into sales organizations. Obviously, we know the CFO's got to sign off. They've got the purse strings, but the facilities manager, something that has nothing to do with what that company does, won the budget, and ultimately they lost their deal. So typically, when you go into a deal, you're like, okay, I know if I'm in this deal, maybe 2-3 of my competitors are in this deal, then we all know we're going up against the status quo, which wins more often than not. But now you're dealing with who's got a better business case to the CFO to get budget approved for the initiative. And it could be something that has nothing to do with what you do. And so the challenge that a lot of people are facing is, hey, we got to get more at bats because close rates are going down. Sales cycles are longer. Less and less of our team is actually hitting quota. And so it's not necessarily, hey, we need more at bats, but we do need more at bats of the right quality at bats. And so that's the problem that a lot of people are looking to solve for. And ultimately, if what they've been doing in-house isn't working, or maybe they don't have an outbound motion, it's just a lot more effective to hire a company like Leadium to do that, because we can typically tee up opportunities at like a third or half of the cost of building it in-house. And in a new sales environment or a new market or a new product offering, it's just better to have that built out before building an in-house team. And then a lot of times we can run in parallel with an in-house team as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so there's the challenges that you're speaking about. So I'm really thinking about when people feel that they're losing a deal, it's not like they lost the deal. It's
Yeah.
just like the deal never happened. So it's one thing to lose to competition, and then you can kind of measure. It's like, well, what do we need to do differently? But when the deal doesn't even happen, you're second guessing. It's like, were we even talking to people that were even halfway serious about this?
Yeah.
Because they may be curious, but if they're not really putting in the effort and the energy, and then you have salespeople that are chasing this, thinking that the person showed us enough interest that we should keep going. And that becomes a massive waste of time. So this is a challenge in sales. We all want the numbers, but the reality is there's a lot of distractions and there's a lot of other needs, other shiny objects, if you will, if your product is a nice to have versus must have.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that it's something that sellers have to address earlier in the process of like, hey, look, where does this fall in the priority? And like 12 months ago, if you were like in the top 3 of solving that problem, and I'm not saying like implementing your solution, that's never their top priority. It's solving whatever problem it is that your solution or product solves for. You need to identify how important is it to solve this. And it's like, solve it now versus later or do nothing. And it used to be 12 months ago, if you were in the top 3, like, hey, that's a good deal. It's got some legs, worth putting the effort in, worth spending some time together, doing all those things, doing the whole dance of what we call sales process. But now it's like, if you're not the number one thing, if you're not at the top of that list, there's a really good chance it doesn't get done. And so how do you position what it is that you do to be that top priority? Or how do you align with the top priority? Or if you're not the top priority, how do you quantify doing nothing or going a different direction to making it now become the top priority? So being willing to address that early on, and then knowing how to navigate, like, hey, can this get to the top priority? Or is what it is that they're doing actually the top priority? And I'm not talking about being some slick, sly sales person that can be like doing some voodoo magic to get to the top of the priority list. But it's like, hey, is legitimately solving this, should it be their top priority? And if it is, it's your job to help them realize and understand that and help them make a good business case to get budget approval, to get the deal done. But if this other thing that they're focused on, that's their top priority, then it's like, hey, maybe it's just now's not a good time. And it helps you, the seller, and the prospect, because sellers don't respect their own time enough. And you can't be spending time on deals that don't have legs.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive waste of time. Unfortunately, they feel like they're being very productive. But ownership, when they find out that somebody was not really in the market and the sales thought it was, it's just like, whoa, the potentially lost revenue, not just getting that deal, but the time emotionally invested in it is a whole nother thing too. It's a whole nother loss.
Well, people don't, doing busy work doesn't mean you're doing a good job. Like, hey,
Right.
I'm on disco calls, I'm on demo calls, I'm sending proposals, I got X amount of revenue in the pipe. And it's like, most deals, I mean, that's why like not very many salespeople are hitting quota. It's because there's so many deals that shouldn't be in the pipeline, which contributes to inaccurate forecasting and which contributes to low percentage of closing. And it just creates this vicious cycle. Like, you're getting your goals based on, yeah, they're coming from the top, but they're also coming from forecasting. And like, you keep shoving junk in the pipeline that's getting forecasted to potentially close, that if you're being real with yourself, you probably know it's like got not as good of a chance or shouldn't be there in the first place. And it's like, people just could keep putting junk in there to appease their managers.
Exactly. Yeah. It seems like unfortunately, it's been a sad game of the numbers that really don't matter versus the results.
Exactly.
So it's the results that go to the bank. It's the numbers in the forecast and the KPIs that are always getting measured. And then people are saying, well, this is good because we've got this many proposals out. We're talking to this many people. We've done this many demos. But if it's with the wrong people, folks, people who are not really in a position to make a decision in 2023, then what you're doing is you're laying the groundwork for future opportunities at best. Yeah. So talk to me about, I'm sorry, your thought?
Yeah. And sometimes the answer is spending more time with less people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So I love it. Share with me what you're thinking on that.
I'm saying be disciplined enough to say no. And it's something that we do at Ladium. Like we turn away 60% of the people that want to work with us because we have a very specific things that we need as a client profile in order to be successful for what it is that we do. And not a lot of companies actually look at that. Like, here's a good customer. What's a bad customer? And let's make sure that we're not getting deals in the door or spending time on deals that make up this bad customer profile.
Oh my goodness. Such a great topic. So not all prospects are good prospects.
Yeah. I mean, and you can control this to some extent when you're doing outbound because you're choosing who you want to reach out to. But when you're working inbounds, like you get what you get. And a lot of times a large majority of what you get is not even worth working at all. And you don't have to be rude about it, but just say, hey, it's not a good fit for these reasons. We don't feel we can be successful for these reasons. We're not the best options because of these reasons. Maybe try to lead them in a path where they could get some help, but they'll respect you for doing that. And ultimately, your reputation matters as a seller. So if you turn them away and you give them a good reason, then they know that you're somebody of integrity and of your word and of honesty and a lot of these things that a lot of these words that people would normally not use to describe a salesperson. So if they have the chance to like refer somebody to you, or if they end up somewhere else where it is a good fit and they need that, who do you think they're going to reach out to?
Exactly. Yeah, this whole concept, like you mentioned, the inbound versus the outbound, one has a strategy. Yeah, the strategy for inbound is, yes, you're going to hit the market so that people are getting notified and they know who to call. But what you get calling or emailing or going to your website and filling out forms may be people who are nowhere near your ideal candidate. Right. And what happens with salespeople? What's the last thing salespeople want to do is go out and look for new candidates, to look for new prospects. So they'll spend the time with people who are not strategic for your business. So they might be nice people and all, but they could be a massive time suck as well and draw on your resources. Depends on how many people are involved in the sales process. Now you've got sales support helping out and so forth, loss of time and loss of the potential business if it was used elsewhere. Just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about opportunity cost. Like there's a cost to everything. And if you're wasting time, that time is costing you because it could be better spent on the right people. So you're doing yourself a disservice, you're doing your company a disservice. And if that you're also not the best fit for that prospect, you're doing them a disservice. So you have to really be disciplined as a seller to know who's a great fit, who's not, and stick to it. And it's really hard, especially if you're like, hey, the pipeline is looking a little not like I would like it to. Yeah, maybe this one's a good fit. And you haven't met the deal criteria, or that there's a reason that you shouldn't move forward. And that's something that's really hard for a lot of sellers. And I think that it also comes down to, I get it, feeling pressure, feeling stress, got to hit your numbers, got to hit your activities. A lot of sellers end up padding the numbers just to feel like, hey, I'm doing a good job. I'm meeting all these metrics. But the only thing that matters is the outcomes.
Exactly.
And you actually, the funny thing is if you actually did less of those things, you would get more of the outcomes.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Like, so the example that comes to mind is someone measuring the number of proposals that are being done.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this at all? Where,
Number of proposals. I mean, it's everywhere. And
yeah.
it's like, and it comes from sales leadership that thinks sales is just a numbers game.
There you go. Yeah.
Sales, and I'm not mad at them because somebody before them taught them that. But at some point, as a sales leader, like, you got to wake up and realize sales is not just a numbers game. And there's a lot of people that will disagree with this, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because they can.
It's a safe tree with me, though.
Yeah.
You and I think alike here. So
yeah,
I'm curious as to how you think.
we're not saying that the numbers aren't important, Harry. I mean, we're just saying it's not only a numbers game. And I came from a school of thought that sales was a numbers game. It was like, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Like, that was the strategy. If you make enough calls, if you talk to enough people, if you send enough quotes, you'll get to your goal. And there's just more to it. And a lot of people like to still sort of pound on their chest of like, hey, no, it's actually just really simple. It's just play the numbers. And the problem with that is then you're like every other salesperson that they're engaged with. And then you become this transactional commission breath salesperson that only cares about hitting the numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. So true. So dead on with what my thinking is. And I love and this carries out into even small business owners who have heard this as well. And one recently said to me, I love the line, because he didn't want to get to know me. He just said, let's cut to the chase.
Yeah.
He just let it out. This is really all about me. So I don't want any small talk. So I'm just going to throw this out. Are you or are you not interested in this? It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So you don't know anything about my business, where I'm going. And this is unfortunately a product of the sales is a numbers game. And they may find the numbers, but their numbers are so skewed in the sense that they have to find all kinds of people, and they are blowing through opportunities right in front of them because they're saying the wrong things. And they're patting themselves on the back saying, I'm getting through the numbers, but you also didn't spend 30 seconds to ask a question that you could have found interest that could at least give you something that may be a little bit different than just a pure no.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the good news is, for anybody who's listening, is there is a lot of sellers, whether it's a founder that sells, individual contributor seller, that operate this way, off this antiquated sales playbook or strategy, if we even want to be nice and call it that. So the good news is that makes it really easy to stand out and be different. It's not as hard as you think. And so what does that mean? It means actually caring about your prospect, actually taking the time to do the things that are required to identify, is this a good fit? Does it make sense for us to spend more time together? Not just loading up a bunch of people in the cannons and hitting go and saying, hey, let's see who raises their hand. Being a little bit more strategic about, hey, who are we going to reach out to? Why are we going to reach out to them? Why would they even care about talking to us? And being a little bit more about like, hey, let's get a conversation started to see if it even makes sense to do this, where a lot of people are being too assumptive and too pitchy in assuming that everybody needs what it is that they do. And sometimes that can come from like really passionate founders that think whatever it is they do is the best, which I get it. It's hard. That's their baby. But you got to have more of a like strategic, consultative type of approach to be different and stand out. Challenge your prospects thinking. They should leave. Here's something that I like to, people that I work with and that work under me on my team, or anybody that I cross paths with that I have an opportunity to like mentor in some capacity, it's just this one simple thing, if you think about it, is people remember a little bit about what it is that you do. They remember some of what you say, but they never forget how you make them feel. And so that could be, hey, if we decide that it makes sense to do business together, maybe we decide it doesn't make sense. Maybe we do business and at some point stop doing business together for whatever reason. Could be, the goal should be to make sure that you gave a good experience and they remember how you made them feel. And if you can do that in all of those scenarios, you're winning.
Yeah, so true. So let's talk about what you're doing today with Leadium and the role of you're using SDRs to help get mind share with businesses, correct?
Yeah. So we have two core services that we provide at Leadium, helping people both in line with helping sales organizations solve their top of funnel challenges. The one that is actually, so the first service is helping people with inbound lead management. So companies that just get a tremendous amount of inbound, they want somebody to respond within 5 minutes and capture that speed to lead. Because I mean, there was an experiment somebody did recently where I think they reached out to a couple hundred SaaS companies and filled out a request a demo form on their website. And a lot of these SaaS companies, they're great at marketing. So they might do webinars, they might have lead magnets, they might have a request a demo form, whatever the case is, they get a lot of leads. And you have the chances of closing that deal go up drastically if you can reach out in 5 minutes or less. And and I don't remember the exact numbers on this experiment, but I know that it was low double digits of how many reached out in 5 minutes. It was, let's just say roughly ballpark 20-30% that reached out in like 48 hours. The thing that shocked me the most was that 30-ish% never reached out.
Mind blowing.
Never reached out.
Yeah.
That's what shocked me. So that's one thing we do, is help them with their inbound lead management. And then the other is we launch outbound sales programs. So we'll build their entire outbound sales program, whether it's new product, new market, maybe they have an outbound team that's not performing and we help fill that gap. And we do it differently than a lot of other people in our space. I'm a partner at Leadium, and the co-founders, Kevin and Sergey, have been in the business for over 10 years. So they've managed over 750 outbound programs. 76 of their clients have been acquired after working with Leadium, helped clients raise over 6.7 billion in funding. 5 clients after working, either while working or directly after working with Leadium, 5 IPOs. So just crazy results with driving really successful outbound programs for companies.
Yeah, great stuff. So the role here of people who are making the calls, commonly referred to as SDRs, what would you say is different about the folks that you're working with compared to maybe other businesses that do similar stuff?
So a couple of things are different. And this is just, and I wouldn't even say this is necessarily like, hey, Leadium as an agency versus like other agencies. Let's just say Leadium in comparison to how a lot of people are doing outbound today. Way a lot of people do outbound today: build a list, reach out to that list, maybe on one channel, the phone, maybe on 2 channels, phone and email, maybe multi-channel, not a lot of personalization. Let's play the numbers game. Don't optimize for performance very often. So even large sales organizations with companies that you would think like, they probably got their stuff together, they rarely optimize their outbound campaigns. And the interesting thing is like, there's been this whole debacle of like, does outbound SDRs and BDRs, should they report to sales? Is it a sales activity? Is it a marketing activity? And the interesting thing is if outbound as an acquisition channel ran more like a marketing campaign, it would be much more successful. And what I mean by that is companies don't just say, hey, let's throw a bunch of money on these ads. sit back for a quarter, hire a bunch of people, see what happens. But that's how a lot of outbound programs are being ran today. They're rarely measured for the right things. They're rarely optimized for performance. And that's the biggest problem, I would say. So what Leadium is able to do is really take a very like data-centric approach. We're very thorough in the data process as far as sourcing data and enriching it with personality data, channel optimized, identifying what channel is best for a prospect to reach out to, identifying what email provider they're using so that we can have better deliverability, using custom videos, using phone, social, or email where it makes sense with prospects, and then making decisions based on how the campaigns are performing, and then A/B testing a lot of things to see what actually resonates with those people. So just kind of briefly, I would say that's in a comparison of like how a lot of people are doing outbound and how we see doing outbound differently.
Okay. So as far as an SDR is concerned, getting on social, say, I believe that everyone is their own brand and that an SDR they have their brand as well. Some businesses may be apprehensive about putting an SDR out on social media with the name of someone like Leadium versus their own business name. What's your thought on that? Is there a compromise there? Is there any value that the SDR is out on social, brand doing their own content and so forth?
So I think it's kind of a mix of both. And I don't think that that's what you were maybe expecting me to say.
No, I don't know the answer. So I'm good either way.
Okay.
I'm curious.
So
but
I agree with the fact that like sellers should have their own brand and like your company doesn't own your LinkedIn and all of that stuff. What I don't agree with is sellers spending more time building their brand and not being good at their job. Because I've seen this backfire where, let's call them LinkedIn influencers or whatever you want to call them, have gotten jobs that they are vastly underqualified for based on their social presence. Being good on LinkedIn does not mean you're good at your sales job. Okay. So if you are not hitting quota and being a schmuck at work, but you've got lots of followers and engagement, that's a problem.
Yeah, big time.
Your priorities are messed up. I think you can kind of like social is necessary, specifically in B2B sales. Like it can be very powerful. Now, sometimes you see people spending time on their side hustle and whatever, and there's companies that have different opinions. I believe company does not own you as a person. So if you have a side hustle and as long as it's not affecting your job, that's fine. It's totally fine. But I think first priority is I'm getting paid for a job. How do I make sure that I'm doing the best job, doing my best work in that job? And that should be priority one. And so a lot of people have that mixed up. And I think that's why some companies may be reluctant to invest in this area for their team or advocate for it or support it.
Yeah, good point. I mean,
so it's a tricky, it's not so black and white. You know?
Yeah. I was thinking more along the outbound side of things that you're trying to reach a person or for a company and so forth. So just visualizing that the person you're trying to reach is engaged on social media. Does it make sense for the SDR or somebody who's doing outbound to periodically comment on that person's posts and show that they're there supporting them as well and not just asking? I mean, it's a way to break into the account, so to speak, by befriending somebody and then eventually they say, are you up for a conversation? Yes. That would be my thought.
Yeah. I mean, social engagement in the comments and then connecting, and it is a great effective way. The problem I think a lot of people do is they treat LinkedIn too much as an outbound channel. Connect, pitch. Yeah. We've all seen this. Those are the folks that have ruined LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if it's done well, LinkedIn can actually become an inbound channel for sellers. That
Mm.
means connecting and building relationships with the right people and consistently putting out content that's relevant, educational, and has value for the people that you want to do business with. And LinkedIn then can become an inbound channel for you.
Yeah, so true. And this, I like what you're saying, and I think I'm making the assumptions that people are going to be balanced in the approach, and that rarely is the case. We frequently go all or nothing, and like you mentioned, is if an SDR is 100% in on social media, or 80% of their time is allocated to social media wrongly, they're not going to get results, because that's definitely the long game, and it's part of what's in the tool bag, but it's not the only tool. So you definitely shared some thoughts there as far as how people view it as the only tool in the tool bag, and that's not good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, good point. All right, so Collin, appreciate you spending some time with me. Where can people find more of you? And maybe you can tell us who you're really looking to work with as far as Leadium is concerned, who fits your ideal candidate, and maybe those who are listening might know somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard answer. We've worked in lots of different industries, but a lot of times it has more to do with the internal sales process, and it has to do with the unique value proposition and things like that. So anybody can go to leadium.com to get in touch there. The best place to get into my world is to just, number one, it takes a lot of work to put on a good podcast like this. So the best way you can show your gratitude to Harry here is to write a review for the show, subscribe to the show, share the show with your friends. It's a lot of work to put on a good quality podcast and show up consistently to have good quality content for the listeners. That's the first thing you should do. And then if you just are like a podcast junkie, kind of like me, you can check out Sales Transformation on any podcast platform that you're on. We do drop daily, 7-day a week sales content there.
Wow, that's a lot. Good for you. How long are your podcasts that you're dropping there daily?
So they're typically have been around 10 minutes. We're going to increase it to about 15, just based on some feedback that we're getting. So you can 10 to 15 minutes every day. There's valuable content there from a variety of different guests.
Awesome. Love it. Collin Mitchell, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Collin. It's been awesome to have you here in the conversation and bring tons of value, and wishing you the best and as you continue your role here as VP of Sales at Leadium. Great stuff.
Thank you for listening to Sales Made Easy. If you found value in our conversations, please subscribe and leave a review. Our goal is to provide practical strategies for growing your business while staying true to your values. Remember, success in sales is about serving your clients. Serve first, and the selling will follow. We'll be back soon with more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep serving and providing value to others. Good things will happen.